Hey, it's Flango. Today we're going to talk about teching a deck and the importance of using your brain. In fact, that I think is what the title says, if I remember to have made it that. So, I need a deck first to tech, obviously. Ooh, this is a good example of a tech. Okay, we're going to make a new deck. Something completely new. What are we going to make? We're going to make... I don't have ideas of good techable decks. Do I even have any real decks? Alright, we're gonna take my tournament deck, my old tourney deck. You guys can use this. It's a good deck. It is an aggro deck. It's not actually Bog Dweller aggro, which is what's interesting about it. It is Swamp aggro, which is very different. So it may be aggro, but it does have some expensive like units. It does play aggressive after a turn or two. So you could argue it's actually more mid-range. I would say aggro is manaless, like almost 100% of the time, or like that sort of style. So Bog Dweller is aggro because it doesn't spend any time waiting around. Although I guess this deck kind of doesn't either. So maybe this is on par with that. Anyways, we're gonna tech this. So okay, well, what do we have? First of all, King Bog Dweller. We're just trying to do damage. Chimera is a finisher. It's expensive. We get to it late, and we only get to late against aggro. So this card right here is actually a tech card. It's not instrumental to the deck. It does do 23 damage on Swamp, which is awesome because it also has Straight Line 4. But it is not a card that this deck relies on. It's not part of the core. It's a tech card. These three cards are complicated because they are the core. The idea is that you're going to be basically the idea is Swamp Terror. That's a core card. You're going to use Swamp Terror to hit the opponent for 8, more if they're an aquatic creature. And then you're going to buff your Bog Dweller because you hit them with Swamp Terror. And you're also buffing the rest of your cards, like Parasitic Wasp, Great Oak Spider, Forest Wyvern, Giant Scorpion, and Chimera. And you're allowing yourself to use Vile Bog as another finisher, etc., 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 right? So, yeah, basically that's the deck's sort of idea. So what's in the core? Well, the core is this card. We could never cut Swamp Terror here. Same thing with Swamp. Swamp is another big buff. We can't cut it. These cards are not in the core well, they are in the core, but they're interchangeable for cards that do the same role. So these cards I would say like set the tempo of the deck. They're our win condition, right? Our win condition is hitting them with Bog Dweller a bunch, yes, and finishing off with hitting with these cards. So we could, if we find that our enemies aren't doing a lot of damage, so let's say they're aggro. We're gonna tech against aggro, right? Great Oak Spider, drop it. It has health, but it doesn't have enough damage, and aggro is never hitting our minions, right? It's always hitting our units, or our king, which is always going to be on top of them because we're also aggressive. So yeah, we don't need the big guy because aggro, it doesn't do that much damage. It does a little bit, but we can actually just run a second giant scorpion. This will allow us to do 14 damage, so we can kill a bunch more minions. We can defend ourselves better with giant scorpion, or we can outrace depending on the situation, right? So yeah, in against aggro, you do value attack more than you value health for the most part for your minions. Now your minions need to be able to handle damage, but as long as you're, let's say, over like 30 or like maybe like you have to be at a weird number like 34 or 33, but yeah, as long as you're at a high enough number, then you're good. So the difference between 40 and 51 is nothing. They're just never going to hit your giant scorpion because it doesn't die. unless they do 40 damage. But if they can do 40 damage in one turn, guess what? They're going to hit your king. So anyways, all this to say, that would be a good anti-aggro tech because this thing kills stuff like Icarus or whatever, right? We could, if we want, we could sit around and this is what we do, or this is what good players do in card games. Maybe not in this game. I don't think there's that many hardcore players in this game, but in card games in general, this is what players do: is they sit down and they say, what cards does this card do better against than the other card, and then they decide, right? And Giant Scorpion versus that other guy who I can't remember is the perfect example. So they would sit down and they'd be like, we're sorting by health already, right? So, okay. This card kills not on swamp, so in a bad situation, this card kills that the other card doesn't: Geomancer, Luminary, Cocoon, Plasma Apparition, Sunset Samurai, Kaze, Icarus, Maneater. That's pretty good. That's like Geomancer's in all the aggro decks, or it should be. Um, Kaze is not really in an aggro deck, but it's a card that you might see. And it could be in an aggro deck. I mean, it's not that different from Geomancer. Cocoon is in like a tempo-y deck that might be a hard matchup for this deck, because they run mostly the same cards, but they're going to be running Cocoon to get them out sooner than you. Luminary, I mean, it's a card you see. Not being able to kill Luminary in one turn is pretty rough. It means that you have to commit a lot more damage in this deck because there's no real small damage cards. I mean, probably it just means you're going to take 7 damage each turn, right? And think about that. That could mean losing your Soul Collector if for some reason they didn't kill it in one hit. Or that could mean losing a Parasitic Wasp if it's already injured or whatever, right? So, yeah, having Luminary killed isn't huge, and that's something that you would consider, but again, it's worth it, potentially. Plasma Apparition, again, it's a pretty aggressive card, but it's also really not. And I mean, nobody plays it, but it could be used. Sunset Samurai, I mean, again, if that's a matchup you care about. Icarus might be the big one, right? Being able to kill their demons means that you're preventing a lot of things, specifically like a Blood Pact card. Betrayal, right? You're, that's really the one. It's Betrayal. So if you're killing enough demons, then I mean, maybe you end up with more. But it's really just like the demon deck, right? People run Icarus, and aggro might run Icarus because it can. So, anyways, there's some reasons to run Giant Scorpion, but the other big reason, oh, and it also kills Maneater for what it's worth. But the big ones again are Geomancer, Kaze, Icarus, Cocoon, and maybe Luminary. So yeah, it's fine. It's an upgrade for, again, like the extra health was doing you nothing on the other card in this matchup that we're teching against. And so yeah, this is sort of how a player techs a deck: is they choose between two cards based on matchups, and then they look at all the cards that it beats and all the cards that it doesn't beat, which in this case is things that would do more damage. So that would be like board control-y kind of guys. I'm not explaining this well, but like Aqua, for example, right? Aqua does 20 damage in a turn easy. Like Shenlong does 20 damage in a turn easy. So being able to survive more than 2 Shenlong bursts is useful. So you look at all the kings and you look at all the matchups and you see which matchups you are benefited by this card and which one you benefit the other, like the other card benefits you more. Then you choose, right? Cool. So back to playing this guy for now. Well, I guess we'll finish teching it for anti-aggro. Okay, so we could put this card in, right? Nice and easy. This card is still good reach, so I would keep it. The reason we were running 1/1/1, by the way, was because Cloning Seeds allows us to copy whichever one we choose. So it sort of gives us more flexibility. And that's why I didn't. So this is why when I made this tournament deck, I didn't do this tech. Because, what's it called again? Great Oak. So I chose to keep this in the deck because I thought that it was a really good card against certain matchups at the time, and I thought that it was really useful to have this extra health so that you could last longer in a fight against a Shenlong or against an Aqua Hydra, right? Um, so that to me felt more important. I mean, you can even last longer against a Taurus Dragon, I think. 24 plus 24 is only 48. So yeah. Um, Not that you're fighting at that in that way against Taurus Dragon. It would be more like you're fighting against Desire's Guardian, which I think was actually another matchup that I cared about. But anyways, that's the idea, right? So keep them both. And I think that's kind of it. Just like that's sort of how to tech. Um, yeah, I mean, is there anything else? Fog Dweller? No, not really. I guess like you could drop the Parasitic Wasps, right? They're good for going late and staying competitive late because it's a big like engine, and every turn it gets more. But if you drop the Parasitic Wasps, then that allows you to run something. Maybe that kills aggro cards. I don't know. It has high attack. Yeah, like Nebulous. So I mean, if Swarm is a big problem, then you could run Nebulous, and then that does 9 damage to everything. So you're getting rid of a bunch of like Swarmy cards, or you're at least injuring them. Like you'll have to get rid of them next turn probably because this is one of the big reasons why aggro is favored in this game, is that a lot of cards like say Griffin, Crabulus, Lava Golem, Icarus, all the high attack cards still have more health than they have attack. So it takes 2 minions. Cerberus is another one. All of these cards are cards like that. Most cards have more health than attack. So what this means is that it usually takes 2 cards to kill 1 card. Or 2 minions to kill 1 minion, right? And then that's why if you just spend each minion hitting the opponent, they're going to have to build up more minions. And then eventually you stabilize, where they can hit you, but then you kill them, and then you do more damage to their king. But overall, like if we think about it, your king is losing. Like, okay, I'm gonna whiteboard. White, come on, white display.com. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so, oh, wrong one. This one. We're gonna look at the health totals between an aggro deck and a control deck, or a deck that is between two identical decks, both playing 0 attack or 0 cost, uh, 9. Yeah, I guess they're 9 attack now. 9 attack and let's say 15 health cards. Okay. So first turn, this guy he plays 1 9 attack. Oh, this is not how it's gonna go. Okay, so turn 1, red plays a 9 attack card. Okay, let's set the health. Well, let's not set the health values yet. So turn 1, this guy does 9 damage to this guy, right? So this goes down by 9. And then he has a 9 attack card on the field. So this guy, I mean, he can run away or whatever, it doesn't matter. They have identical movement or similar movement, so it's not too hard to always hit the opponent. As long as this guy, and he's playing an aggro deck, so he's going to have a king with good movement, he's going to hit you every turn with a 9 attack card, right? So then you kill it. Okay. He doesn't take anything. Now you have a minion though. So okay, here's your minion. Now he hits you again for another 9. Now you've taken 18. You play another minion. Oh, you also can't kill this because it has 15 health. Like, you can kill it with your king. Let's assume you do that, actually. So then, you play another minion, and then you spend both of them swinging at him. Now you can hit with your king. And I don't know, that could be 15, right? Let's say you do 18, I guess. So it actually stabilizes pretty quickly in this case if his king isn't attacking you. Um, and this is why you should place a card and run away. But then if these cards can move in at you, then it's different, and then he starts to get board control, and it's a really complicated scenario. But anyways, I guess if his king can't attack, then your king can't attack. So you're gonna hit him twice, right? Yeah, let's just say minions only for now. So you're gonna hit him twice, and this card's gonna die. He's actually gonna have done 18, but that's kind of whatever. So you're gonna hit him with these two cards, and now he's going to lose one of his attackers. Now on his turn, he's gonna hit you for another 18, right? Because he still has two attackers. And again, I understand that these numbers are inflated, and your king doesn't necessarily just die right then and there. And the real world looks different, right? He might have hit you with his king. You might have been able to avoid, like, use your king to kill some of these cards, but then you would take more hits from his king, and it's complicated. But we're gonna focus on just minions, right? And just sort of see how it is. So he's gonna hit you for another 18 because he has two minions. You're gonna play a third minion now. Your third minion is going to hit. So you're gonna hit his two minions with these two, and then you're gonna hit this one with this one. Now, if you've been doing this correctly, you should be able to kill two minions, I think. Because first turn, you're gonna hit this guy. He's down. He's at half health, let's say. He's been injured. And now there's two guys. You're gonna spend both of them to kill the high health one. And then you're gonna spend, or I mean, you could kill this one and this one's half health. Regardless, he's gonna have one half health guy. Then now he has one half health guy, one full health guy, 18. You spend all three of your guys, you should be able to kill him completely. So now he's down to nothing. He's gonna do 9 to you. You're gonna spawn another guy, right? And now all of a sudden, you only need two of them to hit him. So you are gonna hit him for 18. And then he plays a 9, so you take another 9. And then now you're only going to use 2 again, so now you're going to hit him for 27. And now you're just going to go up by 9 every turn, and he's going to stick at 9, right? And so if we actually look at when this balances out, well, we can just cross these off, and then we can cross these off. And he's going to hit you for 9. And right here is the tipping point, right? So after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns, you are now doing more damage, or you've now done more damage to his king, right? Because 3 times 9 is not as much as 36. This is less than 36. Um, so yeah, this is where we've started to outdamage him on turn 6. Now with kings and with proper, like if you build mana, you can kind of turn this around and make it a different turn, right? You can and depending on the way he does it, he can actually go longer or do more damage to you. So this can be plus or minus 6, right? You could actually start doing more damage than him on turn 3 or on turn 2, depending on how bad his deck is. And if his deck is really good and if yours isn't well teched, then it can actually be more like turn 8. Or it could be more like you're just dead by turn 6, so it doesn't matter, right? Anyways, all that was to explain... shoot. Let me just get rid of that. All that was to explain that eventually you need to be outdamaging them, right? And that point is called stabilizing, or like the stability point. So Parasitic Wasp doesn't kill any of his units very quickly. Oh yes, so I was saying that everything has more health, which makes it good for aggro, right? If things had more if things had more attack than they had health, that would be really, really bad for aggro. And it would be good for aggro usually because like kings would also be in that situation. But if things like, let's say Icarus's health just dropped to 6, all of a sudden control's good because you have these cards with high health and low attack. I mean, we can use Parasitic Wasp as an example. But you have these cards with low attack that benefit from killing things, but they don't usually have enough attack to kill the creatures that are doing the damage to you, right? Like that the opponent is using. So yeah, basically that's a problem, right? And that's where mana cards come in because we want to just be spending one turn, one card to kill him, right? So if we can play a card that generates enough mana to let us play two 20 attack cards or 30 attack cards, I guess, but really it's 20 that matters. We can kill Griffin at 20, we can kill Cerberus, we can kill Icarus, we can kill Lesser Vampire, Shark Warrior, most cards, right? The only ones that don't die are Cabulus, and that's actually kind of it. So anyways, we want to do more than 20, right? So if we can get cards that have attack of 20 or higher, we also have a bit of a drought of cards with enough attack to really matter, and that's another reason why aggro is so good right now. Because the cheapest card with 20 or more attack, you will notice, costs 42. Okay, I guess Nightmare technically costs less. Actually, Shock Leviathan costs less, but again, like, this is why I recommend Water for anti-aggro. Um, this and this are the two reasons. But anyways, yeah, the cheapest one is like around 40. Nightmare goes to the enemies, so it's actually really bad against aggro. So already we're seeing like, oh man, that's really really rough, right? Um, yeah, so you can really just like pretend that you will never kill um, Griffin in one turn. You can just walk away from it, right? Because of its movement. But some cards will be harder to avoid, mostly their king, which is why I just recommend killing their king, or at least threatening to do so, right? Getting board presence, killing their units. But anyways, this is about teching, and I've been rambling a lot. So how would we tech this deck to beat aggro? Well, to be honest, we could keep Parasitic Wasp in, because it's just going to take 2 hits to kill something. Hit with a Swamp Terror, hit with a Parasitic Wasp, and we're developing Parasitic Wasps faster. Um, but I said we could take it out. And, I mean, I wasn't really wrong. I would put Castle Knight in. It does more damage burst to than Parasitic Wasp, right? So this does 12 damage in one turn. Like you pop it, do 12. But also it creates a wall. And if you have a wall in front of you, it's harder for your opponents to hit you, which makes it easier for you to play cards. First of all, Soul Collector. Soul Collector gets a lot of benefit from you having a lot of cards. Castle Knight pops it twice. And then it lets you also play Wraithblade so that you can kill things. So Castle Knight with Wraithblade does a lot. Admittedly, Parasitic Wasp with Wraithblade does also a lot. Um, but yeah, just having, and I wouldn't even put it on my Castle Knight, but the point is that you're doing damage, right? Or the point is not the damage that it does, is that you're getting mana, as well as defending yourself. So yeah, you can use stuff like Wraithblade. You can also Wraithblade your Bog Dweller, but the idea is that Castle Knight is kind of, it comes out faster, you set up a wall faster, and it moves better so that it can actually block and attack at the same time. Plus it does happen to have a lot more health. And 9 is a good level to just get killed by an aggro card. So yeah, I think like a lot of teching is about using your brain. Back to the intro of the video. If you just use your brain and you can understand what you're gonna do, then you're gonna be fine. Like, think about, like, have a plan. Think about, is this card good into aggro? Is this card good into aggro? Is this card good into aggro? Um, oh yeah, then we can look at, like, Chimera again. I rambled a lot, but this is not in our core, right? We've kind of established this at this point. This card It's good if we go late. It's a good finisher. Like, cause against this deck it's meant to be flexible. That's why I have this. Like, the whole theme is flexibility. Because I was in a tournament where I didn't know what the meta was. So I said, okay, we'll have some early game cards so we can be aggro and then finish late. If we're if we're against a late game deck, we're gonna be aggro and finish with Chimera. Um, if we are against an early game deck, then we're gonna have stuff like these things are really cheap. We have stuff like Giant Scorpion, which can keep us alive. Bog Dweller already has a lot of health. We can use Wraithblade, both offensively and defensively. I'm only running one Soul Collector, and I think we can just use Cloning Seeds if we need the mana. If we don't need the mana, then we just leave it at Soul Collector, right? So that's the plan. And Vile Bog is again like it's good anti-aggro because if there's a lot, then you can play Vile Bog and then they all die. 15 damage is pretty good for defending yourself against aggro. That's why I really recommend in a deck that doesn't need to have anything other than Wasteland, then I recommend using this guy, Geomancer, because 15 damage is good and to everything is great. Plus, it's also a good finisher. 15 damage is just really high, especially for 0 cost. Anyways, Chimera is not good against. So let's say everyone's playing aggro, right? So we're like, okay, screw Chimera. We could probably develop more mana with stuff like Soul Collector, or I would play another Cloning Seeds potentially. The problem is that these cards can be worthless if you don't play Wraithblade or Soul Collector. So you might prefer to play just like another Soul Collector, so you get the Soul Collector and not have to like have Cloning Seeds but nothing to play them on. But I would probably still run Cloning Seeds because Wraithblade on your king will always get you mana early in the game. Like first turn kind of thing, right? You have to understand how much damage you're in. First turn, if there's a card on you, like there will be a card and another card, so you can Wraithblade and kill one. Then there will only be the king, and the king will hit you again, or for a first time. But then you can run away and then start to play the game again. Like it depends, right? Against Shenlong, that's an awesome strategy. Against the king that has already hit you once, like Death from or not Death, Deep Space Warrior, maybe you won't be playing Wraithblade. Maybe you want to play Castle Knight, but you are eventually going to try to burst him down because he has low health or whatever, right? Or maybe you run away and then just never play your Wraithblade in that situation. But again, if you're not playing Wraithblade and you don't have a Soul Collector, odds are you're going to be playing stuff like Swamp Terror, Swamp, Castle Knight, trying to hit him or create a wall, whatever, right? Anyways, the point of this is teching, right? We took a deck, it was good, and then we were like, okay, well, let's make it better. Actually, I think there's another swamp. No, there's not. Okay, we'll do that. So yeah, then we made it better against aggro. And actually, if we wanted to make it a lot better against aggro, then we could potentially drop a Wraithblade, play a second Soul Collector. And like, again, you can think about cards like Soul Stealer or whatever. But yeah, that's the idea of teching a deck. Gotta think about how does your deck work and what would be good in your deck, because Wraithblade would suck if I wasn't a big healthy card like Bog Dweller, right? If I was in Desire's Guardian, I would never play Wraithblade. Well, actually, that's probably kind of a smart idea. But you probably wouldn't. Because you don't, like, you're going to be losing a lot of mana playing Wraithblade, or, well, a lot of health playing Wraithblade. Only Bog Dweller can really pull that off. But maybe Harvest Blade Desire's Guardian isn't bad. I haven't really put enough thought into that. Stuff like that, right? Same thing goes for, yeah, if you're a Vampire Progenitor, right? You're probably not trying to trade, although you're trying to run away with your jump because he's going to be on top of you anyways. Same thing with really any weird movement like Zera. Again, you probably don't want Wraithblade because you can't line up a side jump hit. Same thing with Taurus Dragon. It wouldn't work at all for Shenlong, right? So in those decks, you might run something else. And I'll let you guys use your brains. and say, okay, well, Shenlong doesn't need help with the low health cards because it already does 20. So let's get something that can hit the king from afar and sort of pressure them that way. Or that can, whatever, let's just get more mana so that we can pressure the king later. Um, okay, one last thing I want to say, like, everything I'm saying is pressure the king, right? And there's a reason for this. And I'm not saying, like, oh, you just have to be faster than aggro. Because in these situations, I'm actually slower than aggro. I build up mana, but building up mana pressures the king. I'm threatening to do more damage, right? So that threshold that I showed you, where you balance out, that there is um, is the point at which you start to win, right? Well, why are you starting to win? Because you're threatening to kill their king faster than they can kill yours. The entire game is about killing kings. So, yes, a slow deck, like, okay, a deck that runs Meteor as its actual win con, right? 27 damage, and it runs Death from Beyond. It's literally like one turn kill, it runs Gamester, it wins, and it's a slow, bad deck. You could make a better, okay, OTK, but anyways. You're running Gamester, Death from Beyond, Meteor, right? It's a really, really slow deck. And it's not a great deck. But anyways, you're playing Gamester. On that turn, you are pressuring their king. Because they know your archetype, and they know that you are going to play Death from Beyond and Meteor, or double Death from Beyond and do 50 damage in one turn. Because you also have mana. So mana pressures your opponent's king. And that's why building up mana is good against aggro. Because although it doesn't change their playstyle, they don't run away because they're scared, you're pressuring their king. If you have the cards in hand, then you can play big cards that just kill them. Or you're lowering their damage per turn by doing a what am I saying? I'm sorry. I'm kind of distracted. You're lowering their damage per turn by killing all their minions, right? Or playing barrier. Barrier is a good way again against aggro, especially aggro like Bog Dweller, where it's doing big damage in one turn, or this OTK, which would hate barrier. Anyways, if you're using cards that don't necessarily like they're not offensive, you're still hitting that threshold sooner, right? So something like barrier allows you to keep passively building mana while they're not doing any damage to you. Or it allows you to keep passively doing damage to their minions so that they stop doing damage to you. And then if they don't have the resources, like the high damage cards that come out later when you've generated mana, then, or if they just have like a really shallow list of only 20 cards, which you should have a shallow list, but yeah, if they have a bunch of like spells that don't do anything, right? Um, then they are going to be outvalued by you, and then you win because you go later in that threshold. You're the guy who hits his minions and then has minions left over. So that's sort of the idea of like who's control and who's aggro. So I'm not saying like you have to out aggro them. I'm just saying like if you're pressuring their king, and you can pressure their king in a bunch of ways. You can put down cards and actually just hit their king because face racing is a thing. Um, so for example, is this aggro? Am I out aggroing you? If I play Actually, am I out aggroing you if I just play Death from Beyond, right? So I get mana every turn, and then I play Death from Beyond, and you die in one turn because you have 25 health. Am I out aggroing you, or am I just winning because I'm control and I built up to my win condition, right? So in this game specifically, it's very hard to tell the difference between aggro and control. Um, so you just need to think about like what time do they want to win, right? And so to pressure their king, basically, I'm just saying move towards your win condition, right? Your win condition could be Raiden killing all of his minions and then he can't hurt you. Or your win condition can be I killed him with attrition or whatever, right? So anyways, those are some thoughts on deck building, teching, and sort of prepping for matchups and thinking with your brain. and sort of planning what's going to happen, right? So maybe you guys have learned a lot. I think this might be one of my most educational videos, even though it's kind of rambly and all over the place. And I think I had some more plans of things to shout at you guys, make you guys good players, but to be honest, I think that's good. We've got 35 minutes of really good here. Yeah. Do I have any more things to say? I mean, I could tell you guys how to tech against control, but I already showed you that. It's like I've done a whole meta video on how to tech, right? Like you want to be slightly later than your opponent or you want to be a lot faster, right? But obviously decks are going to start to tech against your deck. So say control decks start to run a lot of cards like Castle Knight so they can trade into your early game minions or whatever, right? So you're going to want to run cards that finish them really quickly, so really high bombs. And like this is kind of a mid-game combo deck sort of thing, where if you play Chimera, they can't, like, it's uninteractive. It just moves at them really fast and they die. Or Death from Beyond, right? You literally can't, no amount of board control is going to stop Death from Beyond from hitting you. So these cards are really good at finishing off control, and usually what happens is you try to lower them early game with cards, well, like cheap cards like Castle Knight. It's such a good card. Um, or your King, or whatever, right? Like in this deck, we do it with Giant Scorpion and Forest Wyvern. And so we're lowering them early mid game, and then we're finishing off with a card like Death from Beyond or Chimera. We chose Chimera because it's a little bit cheaper, but Death from Beyond is actually not bad. The problem is Death from Beyond only hits once, right? So Chimera is good if it's your only card too. But anyways, Death from Beyond, or Chimera, or Meteor, or Zera, or Taurus Dragon, or whatever, right? As long as you are finishing them quickly, or yeah, as long as you're finishing them, so Vilebog in this case, then you are doing well. Like obviously you're not going to one turn kill them, but finishing them off is useful. So that's sort of how to tech against control. It's this uninteractive like goodbye. Explosion is really good. And okay, there's a card I hate on because it doesn't do enough damage and it's bad. But as aggro against control, if you haven't been hit and control's been just hitting your minions and doesn't know how to play around explosion or doesn't expect you to have explosion, then this card is another good finisher because it's 10 mana to just finish the game, right? So, anyways, I think I've said enough. That's been teching and using your brain. Thank you.